Guruji, day before yesterday, I attended your training session. So in that, one thing you said, and I was very moved, that the highest goal of a yogi is truth, but the highest goal of a kshatriya is justice.
Yeah. Whereas a sadhu seeks the truth, a kshatriya identifies the lies. Because in Kali Yuga in particular, you will get individuals dressed and as sadhus, as yogis, but in reality they are bhogis. Even when Ravan came and deceived Sita Ma, he came as a sadhu.
Mostly we see that people are talking about Kung Fu, Tai Chi. So what's the reason that Sanatana Shastra Vidya is not as famous as?
The average people don't know this, but the Chinese and the Japanese themselves, even Muay Thai and even the Indonesian Malaysians, a lot of them trace their martial arts back to India. They know it all began in India. When you go to the West, America, Canada, they have the impression that Indians are very clever nerds. But the idea that they're warriors and martials, so on, they don't have none of that.
So you're calling it Sanatana Shastra Vidya.
Yeah.
So is there any evidence that it is being taught in the Gurukul system?
So in the Punjab time, you couldn't use the word Shastra Vidya because they have banned all the weapons. If the British said, look, we banned the Shastra, no one can carry weapons, and then you said, I'm teaching Shastra Vidya, obviously logical is they assume that you have weapons like.
You're calling it science of weapons.
Yeah. Sanatana Shastra starts with first correcting your body. Like Raga Vidya, you got to first perfect your voice box. But for us, we don't play with voice box, we play with the whole body.
Since we don't find any evidence of weapons in Indus Valley civilization, so I want to know from you that how far back do you trace this Kshatriya tradition in India?
When Takshila was discovered early last century, they found a whole lot of swords there. Classical texts, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana and so on, that reference to weapons, particularly Durga, Devi Ma, Bhairav, Kali Ma, Vishnu, they all have weapons. The Vidya as we know it in our tradition begins with Shiva, Adidev. From Shiva it passed on to the Pashupats, and then from there it came down to the Kapalaks. Kapalaks then merged into became the Nathas, and the Nathas then, amongst the Nathas, then he came amongst the Sikhs. Here the pride comes to Sanatana Shastra. When the Kshatriya mindset, a truth that undermines Dharma is a lie, and a lie that upholds Dharma is a truth.
Guruji, namaste.
Namaste.
Welcome to HyperQuest, and we are really very grateful to have you.
It's my honor.
Today we are going to talk about Sanatana Shastra Vidya. Guruji, whenever we think about ancient India, so usually we imagine about sadhus, yogis, and philosophers. We talk about temples, architecture, and our traditions. Always we have been told that India has been a country which has imparted a lot of knowledge to West and other countries. But since we don't find any evidence of weapons in Indus Valley civilization, so most of the people, they don't talk much about warrior classes like Kshatriyas. You have been openly talking about Kshatriyas and Kshatriya tradition. So I want to know from you that how far back do you trace this Kshatriya tradition in India? So
when Takshila was discovered early last century, they found a whole lot of swords there. But they were more Roman influence because Takshila at that time had impact had a connection with the Romans and the Greeks and so on. So it is absurd to think that Indians didn't have weapons because history speaks of Alexander the Great coming here, Porus fighting him, etc. Then in our classical texts, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana and so on, there's reference to weapons, all the gods, in particular Durga, Devi Ma, Bhairav, Kali Ma, Vishnu, they all have weapons associated with them. And to today in the temples, you see the murtiyan with weapons, the chakras are there, the trisuls are there, and so on. So yes, they're weapons. Unfortunately, India's climate is such, it can be very hot, can be very wet, and it's not really conducive to preserve anything. Anything that falls to the ground usually rots away very quickly. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's not even rational or logical. And thus, the Vidya that we have, Sanatana Shastra Vidya, is spoken of as Shastra in ancient texts. The appendage Sanatan to it, just added to it because when the British came in, everything that was ancient, they tried to get rid of. So in writings like Sikh writings, he talks about Shastra Vidya as being Sadaiv Dharma Kshatriya Ko Chalyo Sanatana hai. So the Sadaiv, the eternal dharma of the Kshatriyas, has come from Sanatan times. So the word Sanatan can literally mean most ancient, most timeless, but more specifically means, like I said, timeless, pure times, and so on. So Sanatan is there. And so hence in British Raj time, they said, no, we call our art Sanatan Shastra. Because British, when they came here, they clamped down on all India's indigenous martial groups who did not support them, who did not go along with them. And as a consequence, the traditional Indian arts were clamped down on simply by clamping down the weapons, confiscating the weapons. So later on, with the Indian Arms Act came into being, later on, Indian Criminal Tribes Act came, anybody deemed to be habitually born as a criminal, carrying weapons and so on. So people like sannyasis, Nihangs, etc. and so on. So, no, Sanatan Shastra Vidya has existed from the very beginnings. Dharmasya Shastra Vidya. In the Mahabharata, it says, like the essence of Dharma is Shastra Vidya. And we know Kshatriya existed in the fourfold system of the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. The Kshatriyas are there. Like, so it'd be wrong to assume. Like I said, our climate is not really conducive to preserve a lot of stuff. Everything just gets rotted away quick.
So you're calling it Sanatan Shastra Vidya.
Yeah.
So is there any evidence that it is being taught in the Gurukul system or along with these subjects, philosophies, other sciences?
Okay, so Shastra Vidya itself, Sanatan Shastra Vidya. So like I said again, Sanatan word came applied once the British start clamping everything down. So the British clamped down on Shastra Vidya. So in the Punjab at that time, you couldn't use the word Shastra Vidya because they have banned all the weapons. If the British said, look, we banned the Shastra, no one can carry weapons, and then you said, I'm teaching Shastra Vidya, obviously logical is they assume that you have weapons like the Nihangs of today, if you see them, one of the only few people in all of India who keep weapons. Even the Indian Constitution, Article 25, talks about the right of the Sikhs to carry kirpans. So he's not talking about a kirpan, but kirpans multiple. And kirpan is a talwar, is never a dagger, which are peshkabs and khanjars, etc. and so on. Because the Nihangs did not surrender their weapons to the British. And eventually they came to a compromise. The Nihangs can keep their way of life. And as long as they don't interfere with British Raj, and the British Raj don't interfere with them. So that kind of understanding was had. So within the Nihangs, the Vidya itself has now it's all gone. There was one individual, his name was Sawan Singh Bangru. He was a Brahmin, of a Brahmin family. The family originally came from Kashmir. And at that time, the Kashmir itself was part of the Sikh Empire. And then their family drifted down to Haryana, which is also part of Punjab at that time. And there they married into local Jats. And the Sawan Singh Bangru was the one who kept the art alive. He was, after the Anglo-Sikh Wars, we're talking about an individual who the British were hunting down, declared himself, he became a renegade. But the British, of course, going to call them Dakus and so on. And he kept the 30 years they hunted him down. And eventually, before he died, he managed to pass the Vidya on to two individuals who then passed on to someone else. And then the Vidyas come down to us now. So I'm the ninth in that particular lineage from 1661. So at that time, when the British said no Shastras, no weapons, they said fine. And they start calling it, so there's Gatka. Gatka, they didn't have issue with Gatka. So in India, there's two types of martial arts. There are the village arts, which only peasants will utilize. And the only peasants are not going to have the same kind of equipment, armament, like armor, chainmail, high quality breeds of horses, highest quality of swords, as say the kings, like the Kshatriyas, the Rajputs, and so on. And it is not in the interest of any government to arm the peasants to the same level as their own armies. Like, it's not in their interest. Even today, in India today, you won't allow, okay, how rich you are, you could be a multi-billion trillionaire, you will not be able to buy certain militaristic, say, missiles, tanks, etc., because it's illegal. Like, only government can possess that. So we have now village arts, and in British Raj time, village arts deteriorated, and they were deteriorating before that even, into exhibition arts. So exhibition art is an art that is designed for showmanship. And is not designed for combat and so on. Whereas the royal arts, like Shastra Vidya, it is designed purely for combat. So if you want to compare the royal arts to the village arts, so whereas the royal arts, they fight as you see chessboard. You see how the pawns, the elephants, they're being arranged. So in kind of in formations they fight, and in very tight formations with armor and chainmail. So because of armor and chainmail, they have to move in a particular way. And with that, I'll speak a bit later on, they have a certain body mechanics too, because they can't do it muscular. Whereas village arts, they are more so for at the end of a battle, when the enemy ranks been broken by the main army, to charge and swarm the enemy stragglers, surround them, and then cut them down the blind sight. So they're not as skilled, but nowadays, the exhibition arts you see, a lot of jumping about, a lot of twirling the weapon around their body, a lot of tol tamakka and all this. And then with Gatka in Punjab in particular now, they're introducing stupid acrobatics, and then they like it's called putting kerosene in the mouth and spraying. So all these are circus acts. But this has been understood for a long time. Patteba khel dikhawta hai, soor bhi kato karta hai. So even early, it's like 15th, 16th century, Guru Nanak Dev time, they spoke of gatkebaj as demonstrating games, exhibitions, whereas warriors, they do the real deed and so on. And whereas the deed of the warriors is the real deed, the deed of these pattebaj is just a deception. So that existed. So in British Raj, they could not call it Shastra Vidya. So Nihangs began to call Jhatka Gatka. So the word Jhatka means to kill with a single blow.
Single blow.
And that's the main difference in Shastra Vidya and say the village arts. In Shastra Vidya, we have concepts like Sher Drishti and Kuka Drishti. So Kuka is a word is dog. If you attack a dog with a weapon, he will attack the weapon itself. So if you see Gatka or other exhibitions, martial arts, you see a lot of clashing, stick on shield, sword against sword and all this and so on. And that's all known as Kuka Drishti. Whereas if you attack a tiger, a leopard or a lion, he'll just pounce past or surge past the actual strike and get hold of the person who's attacking him. So in Shastra, we employ Sher Drishti. We move in such a way that we can easily go past any weapon strike and cut them down. So whereas in exhibition arts, they'll give you a lot of strikes, head strike, shoulder strike, leg strike, and all that. In Shastra, there's no strikes given. We just get in quick, get on their head, and once at the chadga, chatka. Simple as that. So in British Raj, it became known as in Punjab, became Jhatka Gatka. So they couldn't call it Shastra Vidya. They said, okay, that exhibition stuff is Gatka, ours is Jhatka Gatka. Jhatka hai Gatka, Gatka hai Jhatka. Ek choke se, so with one blow. Ek choke se jaan har pe. So Jhatka Gatka jaaniye, avar Gatka so kacha, phikka, jhootha, nakamma, maniye. So even have boldness showing the other stuff, which is exhibition stuff. And so it's a British Raj, they added the word Sanatan to it. And don't forget, with British Raj coming in, you had a lot of Reformation coming in. So you had Brahmo Samaj, and then you got then Saraswati coming in and so on. And then amongst the Sikhs, you had the Singh Sabias coming in, and they're taking on board a lot of Christian ideas and try to accommodate traditional Indian traditions to the British, which there's no need to, like, because where then the Sanatanis, amongst the Sikhs and the Hindus in general, they became more defensive. They openly began to care with Sanatan. And that time, Shastra Vidya also then, in the closed circles, it came known as, it's not just Shastra Vidya, because Shastra Vidya could be any. Shastra Vidya literally means science of weapons. It could be science of weapons from Japan, from China, from America, wherever. But no, this is Sanatan. So meaning is specifically connected with the Sanatan culture.
Guruji, when you're talking about Sanatan Shastra Vidya, you're calling it science of weapons.
Yeah.
So what's the reason behind it? I mean, you employ some tactics or strategies that are backed
No,
by science.
the fundamental understanding. So Shastra Vidya, the word Vidya means science. Okay. And what makes the Sanatan Shastra Vidya work is its specific, we call this body mechanics. Okay. So Dhanapeda, the secrets of the body, like. So our ancient ancestors, the Rishi Munis and so on, and don't forget, ancient Rishi Munis were Grihasthis. Even the ancient Rishi Munis, many of them were armed as well, like. So we have in the Rig Vedas, we have the Verte, the ones who keep the penance, and some of them were well armed. The Verte, then later on we had the Pashupats and the Kapaliks, and from there the Natha Babas, and from Nathas it came down to the Sikhs, like. And all them are linked with the Bhagwan Shiva. As a consequence, it's called a Vidya because it is a science. So the ancient Rishi Munis, for instance, like Rishi Kanad, who is the founder of the Visheshka school of philosophy of the Darshan. He figured out, understood gravity. So there's a science, ancient India, known as Gati Vidya, science of motion. So every type of motion there is, motion of the rivers, of the oceans, of the winds, all types of motion, they studied. The harkat, the pumping of the heart, every type of motion there was, even the blinking of the eyes, any kind of motion which represents life, they studied. To study gravity, they looked at balls rolling down a gentle slope, they looked at pendulums, they looked at swings, they looked at it called wheelbarrows and so on. So by understanding gravity, they began to apply it at some point, we don't know when, to bodily physics. Now, one of the reasons is that India is extremely hot. And we have elephants. And early Indians managed to domesticate the elephant. And if you watch how the elephant moves, the elephant is in terms of weight, is the heaviest animal there is. And the elephant does not necessarily push off the ground as we think. When the elephant basically moves by basically moving its mass ahead of itself, even with the head and the trunk and so on. And the belief is that by riding elephants, they began to feel this dulkami char. So dulkami like spilling step. Then over the years, they began to figure out how to move with the spilling step. So what is a spilling step? Spilling step refers to a step in which you do not push off the ground. You not directly engage the muscles, but you will take your body mass ahead of your center of gravity, and thus that will pull your feet. That's the basic level. Then as you develop your body mechanics, so the body mechanics, we speak of in three types in Kshatriya. There's avidya, meaning no body mechanics, no knowledge. Avidya, koi vidya nahi hai. That means when you're purely using muscles, like everybody now here uses muscles. Second is kachi vidya, where you are moving your outer frame by taking your body mass physically, mechanically beyond your center of gravity to move. But the pure vidya is known as bhakti vidya. In there, you learn how to relax down your body, and you relax, for instance, down the shoulders as deep as you can, then eventually the shoulder blades, then down the multifidus muscles, down spine, eventually down spine, and you create it's called compressive akarshani shakti. So the Guru mantra of Shastra Vidya, because if you look at any kind of philosophy in India, they always have a Guru mantra. The Guru mantra of Shastra Vidya, the key fundamental principle that's applied throughout is Kal. And Kal represents Akarshan Shakti. Akarshan Shakti is Gurtavaya Akarshan Shakti. And of course, Gurtavaya Akarshan Shakti, which is Akarshan, which is Kal, it also refers to Shiva. So Gurtavaya Akarshan Shakti, gravity, they understood that the body is mostly water. So if you relax your muscular structures, you train them in such a way that they can relax, release their mass, and the mass species relax. And with that, the internal structures, the Ragaresha, they begin to relax. And as they relax, they begin to release their mass and they start compressing the water in your body, the water quality of the body. And that will give you buoyant force. Okay, and to start all that first, you need to establish what we term as Stanu. So in the Vedas, they always speak of the Stanu. Shiva spoke of Stanu Vitta or Stanu. Vishnu spoke Stanu, the pillar, the cosmic pillar that holds the whole universe together. Stanu is the most perfect posture. And in Kshatriya, we have 3 levels of refinement of posture and so on. And with having the right posture, you can then utilize gravity and relax deep into your structures. You will generate Akarshan Shakti, then Okark Shakti, expanding Shakti. So Akarshan, the compressive energy, is spoken of as male Shiv. The expansion that comes from there, because as the buoyant force comes up, then your tendons, your tand, latch onto it, and that gives you the expansive energy. And that's linked to the Devi. So in that sense, we use these 2 energies to generate our movement. And it's a bit there in the context that we are using a particular science, and we're very aware of every aspect, how we stand. So like in modern day world today, like if you look at it, 99% of human beings around the world have no idea about what is correct posture and so on. Many will stand with their legs wide open, not knowing the fact that this will eventually wear down your hips. Many of them are walking on hard grounds, not with the right shoes, so their feet are sort of bent inwards. Many others nowadays with phones looking down, and then as a consequence, they're getting bad posture in the neck, and then others are working like this, and others are overweight, so they're like this, so the posture is all gone and so on. So Sanatana Shastra starts with first correcting your body. It's like Raghavadya, you got to first perfect your, I can say, your Rudra Bina, your Kant Bina, that your voice box. But for us, we don't play with voice box, we play with the whole body. Like. So getting the correct posture, then building a body which we call Sadol Lechkdar, which means firm, strong, muscular, with soft, resilient, tensile strength. And now the Vidya itself, underlying philosophy is Advaita Vedanta. So in Advaita Vedanta, they speak of the concept of Sahajanand and Sahajavastha, the natural, spontaneous, effortless state. So the Vidya also aims to attain that state as well. So in Vidya, because we're not exerting muscles directly, so you saw me yesterday how I move. I can bounce up to 18 feet without any exertion, whatever, so on, because of the buoyant force, expansive energies, and so on. And because of all this understanding of body mechanics, this is what sets it apart from 90, I would say about 95% of the martial arts and so on. There are internal martial arts. In the Chinese world, they call it internal martial arts. But a lot of the internal martial arts themselves have suffered greatly due to persecution or neglect and so on, both in China and Japan. And of course, it takes a lot of dedication to fully attain this, what's called abilities to do, able to relax. I mean, in the modern day world, relaxation is one of the most hardest things people find to do. Like, but Shastrada, we have that. We have this complete art. If you go on the app, you'll see there are a lot of testimonies of high-ranking martial artists around the world who will give testimony to all this. So because there's a particular body mechanics, it works with gravity, he has understandings of relative movement and actual movement, and all this makes into a science.
Guruji, you're talking about body mechanics, agility, mastering the waters of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly we youth can remember Bruce Lee, because he was also talking about this,
Mm-hmm.
how you should act like water whenever you are fighting.
Yeah.
So when we talk about these fighting traditions,
Mm-hmm.
mostly this, if we talk about martial arts,
Mm-hmm.
mostly we see that people are talking about Kung Fu, Tai Chi. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the reason that Sanatana Shastra Vidya is not as famous as
So simple reason is during British Raj, it got suppressed big time. Okay, so it got suppressed big time. And then there's also a great tradition of secrecy. So they have sayings like Jinpir Paya, Tanish Paya, Gupt Kidran Nath Ki Chille. So these are there, like, and so on. And funny enough, whereas the average people don't know this, but the Chinese and the Japanese themselves, even Muay Thai and even the Indonesians, Malaysians, a lot of them trace their martial arts back to India. They know it all began in India. Like even Bruce Lee, with, I think, I can't remember his name, so actor called Coburn or so on, he actually came to India on his way to Hong Kong to find Indian martial arts. So the Chinese, the Japanese, they're aware of it. But like I said, one is a secret tradition. It's a Gupta Pera. The other was under British Raj. And for whatever reason, even amongst the Sikhs, this is only survived because of one guy who didn't let die, like Sawan Singh Bang, and then two other guys, and one other guy, and then it came to Magadeh, then it came to me, like. So I am the first one now openly writing reference books, so explaining everything in terms of what it is, what it's not, and all this. And I'm globally teaching. So otherwise, it made sense in the past to keep it a secret. So your enemy doesn't know what your skills and abilities are. So if the enemy didn't know, if the enemy just saw you from a distance and they couldn't figure out how you move and all that. So they have in Punjab, in Shaturda, from a distance we will show Kachaj, which means bedang. So they're bedang. So it's a not proper way of doing it. And then once we close in to engagement, then they do it properly, like. And the reason for that is, it's just to keep it hidden, like, because from a distance where we're not engagement range, they can figure out, if they see what you're doing, they can start figuring things out. And if they realize that you're too great, then they can run away, come back, analyze, and come back stronger. But if you show Kuchaja here, or it's not proper, and then when he's there and they think, okay, he does this, and suddenly you change to something completely. So, so if you don't know techniques and tactics together, you will not find success. So it's not about just skills, it's about marrying them with tactics. That is there, like that. And plus, Sanatana Shastra there is the physical martial side teaches you how to protect yourself. So at the most basic level, there's what we call Savaraksha Bhuttasar. So Bhuttasar means Kamachalju. Like. So the average person may come from the street, they ain't gonna spend all that time exercising and all this dedication. They just want a few techniques, how to protect against a punch or a kick or a stick or a sword or whatever. So these are just easy to learn, quick against the average human being. And so on. So they're taught Savaraksha, that where techniques are. Then those who are more serious, then they start teaching them the proper Jang Vidya. But even the first number of years, 12 years in the past, they will not teach you they will teach you bits. This component, that component, that component, that component. And then eventually, when they're 100% that you're going to be pakka, you're not going to misuse it, then they'll bring it all together to make it into what it actually is. And so on. Because this idea of guarding it against what we call chunchiganis, like people with specious knowledge. Because nowadays, like in anywhere, in any kind of what you call education system or training and so on, you get individuals who are coming to the classes. And in Punjabi, we say, he hasn't studied one class, but he wants to educate everybody. Like, so that element is there as well. So always they try to guard against the art, against that way. So that's another reason why the art is kept secret. Like. So people will not abuse it. But in the past, this didn't really count much because in the old days, your head will roll. If you misused it or you taught it without permission, they'll minimum take your ankle or your hand or your head. Of course, nowadays, you cannot do that. So nowadays, they're more cautious. So the Vidya itself, like I said, is Chinese, Japanese, so on. And because the Chinese industry has got movies, and they brought that out and so on. But to be honest with you, even the average person, if their understanding of Chinese martial arts is based on Hong Kong movies, they ain't got a clue what it really is. Because the movies don't represent real. See, any movie doesn't, because that's for showmanship. Whereas true martial arts, that's combative, is going to be over in a blink, and it's going to be invisible. Like, so don't confuse movie combat and all that with actual combat and so on. That's the difference there. Like, now, again, now with the last 10 odd years now, more than that, 10 years, like, the art is now spreading around the world. So we have an app now out there, Sanatana Shastra Vidya, and so the world is spreading globally now. Now the books are coming out, all the evidence is presented there from the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Agni Puran, etc. texts, and on the Sikh historical texts, Maratha texts, etc. to demonstrate what the Vidya actually is in the ancient days. And so this way we can raise the profile of the Vidya. And the benefits of the Vidya, apart from teaching self-defense to the average person, even to small children, to teenagers, etc. and so on, builds their confidence. But if you look at here, a lot of people are unhealthy physically. They're out of shape. Kids are so small. In England, a 7-year-old looks like your 14-year-old. The diet is there, or the exercise, whatever it is. Something's lacking here in terms of diet, exercise, and so on. And then the physical culture is weak in that sense. So the Vidya will introduce the physical culture there. The Vidya also reaches back into history and traditions and philosophy. So every technique or any concept is linked with a particular myth. It's not just taught in isolation, because the only way they can come through history was they package the concept, technique in a myth, and then it traveled through history. So if you know how to decipher that, how to unpack that myth, you will have the technique as well, and so on. So it's linked totally with our Sanatana culture, and since all the fighting forms are influenced directly by Bhairo, by Varha, Sheshguru, Nandina Singh, Hanuman, Bhagdeva, Ashpadeva, Chandika, Kalaka. So all the gods are the inspirations behind these. So for ancient masters, they would meditate in ancient groves, in orchards, Rishi Munis, and they'll meditate on the Devi Devta and so on. And then they came to this understanding of how to apply studying nature, studying animals, environment, and then how to apply this to actual physical movement, and then eventually to combat as well. Like. So like even Hatha Yoga, all the postures are based on animal postures, same with Shastra as well. Like. And within Sanatana Shastra, there's a martial yoga known as Sanyam Kriya Vrayam, which again, in terms of body mechanics, is a lot different from Hatha Yoga. For instance, they have emphasis on hyperextension, stretching, chronic stretching is not found in Sanatana Shastra. Our physiques have to be slow and lechidar, and our stretching, our strength is all functional, and the body mechanics we have, that employ gravity, expansion, proportionally, they are stronger than using normal muscles and so on. So that also gives you, so the average athlete, they think in terms of fast twitch muscles. For instance, like you mentioned Bruce Lee, he was always trying to develop his fast twitch muscles to get the fastest punch he could get. But fast twitch muscles start fading away at the age of 25 onwards. Then for stamina, they emphasize upon slow twitch muscles. They tend to fade away 45 onwards. In Sanatana Shastra, we bypass all that in a particular way. And thus we can generate thermal speed and attain great stamina because we're not exerting physically directly. So again, the ancient Rishi Munis of thousands of years really thought this out. And mainly it's because India is hot and they're going to move in armor and chainmail. You cannot just move as normal with armor and chainmail, which could be up to about 17 kg, with weapons on, be about 22 kgs. Carrying all that, you're not going to move as an ordinary person. You need to relax, absorb the mass, integrate into your structures, and thus generate buoyant force, and then move.
So Guruji, since you're on the mission of spreading this Sanatana Shastra Vidya, first and foremost, this question arises in everybody's mind that why do we need this hand-to-hand combat techniques when today?
So again, it's not really just hand-to-hand combat. I mean, I teach modern day military, soldiers, police, and everything as well. And the violence in the street is still a reality. Physical attacks, that's called the fear of getting physically attacked. Many people have that. So a lot of children, they go to school, if they get bullied a bit, that fear settles in, and when that fear settles in, their confidence goes, and if that can traumatize them, affect their whole life, and so on. So the smart thing is to avoid, circumvent violence, but it should be a toolkit in your toolkit of life. That if you do get confronted by a violent situation, you can diffuse it, you can walk away from it, and then they say avoid. First, choose this. They said avoid, circumvent, and then escape. So if you can't avoid, circumvent, escape, and then the choice is yours. If you want to get killed, raped, beaten, it's up to you. But this gives you that. But more than that, Sanatana Shastra Vidya it represents the whole totality of culture. Like the ancient Rishi Munis, like Rishi Vyas and so others, so on, when they spoke in Mahabharata and they called it Masya Shastra, the essence of Dharma. I mean, that's a big thing to call it, the essence of Dharma. Vidya relies on total relaxation. That can be only done through attaining a level of relaxation, which can only be attained through samadhi. So meditations and stuff are done. It is, if you look at Char Veda, you have the 4 Upaveda. And with Yajurveda, you have Dhanuveda. And Dhanuveda is a secondary Veda. It is a Shastra Vidya Veda through Shastra. So it is there from the beginning. And as I said, all the Devi Devta, particularly Durga, Bhavani, Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh even, they all Shastra Tari as well. So having this Vidya in your asana, firstly, it teaches you a very disciplined life. So daily exercising. So that way your whole quality of life changes, your health improves big time and so on. You can move and do things that to the end of your life that you couldn't do normally and so on. And thus your quality of life with the quality of health, that's there. It gives you confidence. And believe it or not, Shastra Vidya, it is sattvic in mindset. So Guru Gobind Singh, he would finally teach Krodh Navar, Daya Man Lao. So forsaking Krodh, anger, Daya Man Lao, adopt compassion in your heart. Ek man ho bhajan Narayan. So ek man hoye, with one focused mind, contemplate on Narayan, on Vishnu, Mahavishnu, Brahma. Khima Dharma Anurago. That's the love the Dharma of forgiveness. So in the Vidya, we have ultimate worship is of Nirguna Brahm, which has no qualities and so on. And that Nirguna worship is simple. It is seeking Sarvata Pala, seeking welfare of all. So in Sikhism we say, Nanak Chardikala, Tirepani Sarvata Pala, by divine grace, may everybody stay in high hopes and seek the welfare of all. In Bhagavad Gita is Sarvut Hit Rata, seek the welfare of all. And then in the Upanishads is Vasudeva Kutam, seek the whole family, see the whole world as a family. That is there. So what we're looking at is a way of peace, or shantras. But you won't be shant if you have fear inside you. If you feel there's a threat from outside that can harm us. Take India now. You take away his army. What would happen? And same way here. So the Vidya itself will get you physically, mentally fit. And individuals, if the army needs them, they can be easily recruited because we have mind set and so on. And it's called physically they fit, mentally they fit, the health-wise fit, but they're also connected to the history, the traditions, and so on. So our great heroes, as Shivaji Maratha, Chhatrapati Shivaji, Rana Pratap, Prithviraj Chauhan, Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Hargobind, all these great heroes we have. It's a way of also remembering them as well, because they do exist as well, and so on. And so Sanatana Kshatriya is a bridge to the martial ancestry, to the martial philosophies and histories and traditions.
Guruji, was it practiced all over India alike or?
Yeah, so at the beginning, so Kshatriya, if you look at the ancient texts, in the Veda, Agni Puran and Mahabharata or Ramayana, so is Kshatriya. Amongst the royalty is Kshatriya. Amongst the villages, there are things like Lakadbaji, just some sticks, Pattabaji, which is like lower quality swords and so on. And so the kings, as I said before, will not arm the peasants to the same degree and train them to the same level of skill as their standing army, which makes no sense. So like same as India now. India has its national army. He's not let militias get rise here in India. So that was the case in the past. But this, every time there are foreign invaders coming in, so we have, early on, we have the Savetta Huns coming in, the White Huns and so on. And as they're coming in, eventually the Indians rallied, like Harsha Vardhan. So we know in Harsha Vardhan's time, he was from Tanesar, Haryana side, Punjab side, and he conquered all from Punjab side over to Bengal, and he went south until the, I think, Chalukya kings checked him. The fact that they checked him, that shows that they had the same Vidya at that time. Okay, that's in south, because they control the Deccan and down south. But over the period of time, so even when the Muslims came in later on, and later on, people like Akbar realized that they can't outright defeat the Rajputs, and they're wasting a lot of time trying to fight each other. So they came to a compromise. The ruling classes of India, the Rajputs and the Mughals, began to intermarry, and they began to compromise. And then you have that, what they call the Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb mixture and so on. Even if you go to Rajasthan now, like if you look at their palaces, their killas, it's a mixture of it and so on. Even the language changed. They developed Urdu and so on. So the clothing, the food, everything, they intermingled and so on. But the most devastation came later on when the British came. So with the British, they systematically started disarming everybody, made it illegal for anybody to possess weapons. Only people that can possess weapons were those deemed to be under British control, who were fighting for the British. Sometimes they let the tribals around the borders to protect their lands, keep their weapons so there's no raids and all this, but generally they disarmed. And later on, the Indian Arms Act came. Later on, they created what's called Indian Criminal Tribes Act, in which they declared whole swathes of different communities as being habitually born as a criminal. So you were not criminal because you committed a crime. You were declared a criminal because you were born into that particular society, and so on. So as a consequence, the British began to really crack down on anybody who could potentially be a threat to them, because the British numbers were very low here compared to Indians and so on. And as a consequence, Vidya began to decline. And in South India, the Vidya declined much earlier. We talked about early 1800s. Kalari practitioners, any serious masters amongst them, began to be systematically hunted down and killed. And the British would easily do that. Anybody they wanted to hunt down, they didn't call them renegades. They called them dakus, bandits. Just like nowadays, people just call them terrorists if you want to get rid of someone. So they began to do that, and they began to really target them and so on. And then later on in the 19th early centuries, Kalari, for whatever reason, themselves watered it down to make it a more exhibition art themselves like. And then throughout India, during the British Raj, mainly the exhibition arts, village arts, which were originally village arts, which can be used in terms of once the main enemy has been, ranks have been broken, they can be used to just large numbers swarm and cut them down. But those village arts eventually in British Raj deteriorated into basically a circus act, into exhibitions. And not many survived and so on. Shaturudaya only survived, it's another form, because of one guy. And then he passed to Sawan Singh Bangru. He was the fifth Gurudev. So the Vidya as we know it in our tradition begins with Shiva, Adidev. From Shiva it passed on to the Pashupats. It's called Pashupats are ancient Shivite sect. Shiva Uchita Pashupats Sumke Rangarachate, says Guru Gobind Singh. And then from there it came down to the Kapaliks. The Kapaliks then merged, became the Nathas. And the Nathas, then amongst the Nathas, then he came amongst the Sikhs. And that's how the Vidya came down. And this particular school I represent was founded by Baba Darbara Sood in 1661. And then with that, Baba Darbara Singh, then came Sukha Singh, then his brother Lakha Singh, and so on and so on. So the art came down to us, Sukha Singh, then Sawan Singh Bangru came. And with this, the art, Sawan Singh Bangru really, he was hunted down for about 30 years, but he kept the art going. And as a consequence, he just about survived. But as he says, all it takes is one jigyara, one little spark to ignite everything. And that's what we're doing now. We're living in a modern technological age, so now we can really spread the word of what this is. And that's what we're doing here. And amongst the masses, majority will just, at the most, the idea is that everybody should be aware of it. That's the basic, like ground level should be that everybody out there, whether they're uncle, auntie, and granddads, or whatever, they should be aware that there is Shastra Vidya. And a lot of people read Ramayana, Mahabharata, and they read about the battles and all that. So they know there is something there. But the actual technical, tactical, strategical side, they don't know. So here it is now. And first level is just get mass awareness globally, and particularly in India. Second level is a lot of people come in who just want to build a Sauraksha. Because a lot of young men, young women, they don't have the time or dedication to really, because it's a classical art. So like with all classical art, you need to really dedicate yourself to it and practice assiduously. So just like in classical music, whether it's classical, it's called Rag Vidya singing or playing instruments or doing Kathak dancing, Kathakali, you won't expect large numbers to join in and so on, because all those sciences, classical sciences, tend to be subtle and sophisticated, and thus it takes time and dedication. And in this day and age, people know it's focus and so on. And then eventually, the idea for us is to pick out a few around the world, pick out a few people we recognize has potential to that can understand, and then that can actually, you can see they're progressing. Then the idea is to isolate them, like even 10 people we isolate, get enough funding that we can fund them for life. Because there's no point me training someone up, and then he learns Vidya, and then he has to go back to a 9-5 job, then he can't keep the practice up, and then the Vidya fades away. Like, so this is the same model that Viju Maharaj did as well, like with Kathak dancing. He created his non-Ratan and then got them preserved. So we can preserve the art in its purest, pristine form, then at the basic level, so Sauraksha form, and then there's also specialized aspects which are for soldiers or police and so on, that can be utilized as well. Like, but the art itself, it attaches to history, traditions, philosophy, and so on. That's why it's called Sanatan. So, like it says in the ancient texts, Sadiv Dharma Kshatriya ko chalo Sanatana. So, it's eternal Dharma of Kshatriyas has come from Sanatan time. The time is timeless.
Guruji, if you look at the current situation, even after the independence, Indian women always face street violence.
Mm-hmm.
So, does Sanatana Shastra Vidya help women as well? Or
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, Ishtadev is Devi Chandima. So in Chaturya, puja is of Ram, but main at Sargun level, because Nirgun Sargun Prabhava, main deity in terms of like the Adi Gurudev, the first master is Shiva. Then Karta Sava is the benign Sava of Vishnu. Ishtadev, the one we worship in the Kara, is Devi Ma Chandi, declared Jagannath form. Mental tactics and thinking and so on, tactical approach and such as Shiva, Krishna. And then Adrish, Maryada Purushottam, is Sri Ramji. So we have these 5 deities. You have Shiva, you have what's called Vishnu, you have what's called Devi Ma, you have Krishna Maharaj, and you go to Maryada Purushottam, Sri Ramchandraji. Yes, females, because this Vidya does not rely upon brute physical strength, but on a specific body mechanics and so on. And both unarmed and with weapons, yes, it can provide you self-defense, but a lot of it can also provide you just with awareness. So you can read a situation and become aware of potential threats and dangers and remove yourself from there. Like, because a lot of people that get attacked, they're almost walking in with their eyes closed. So if a good percentage of society begins to just attain awareness with the Shatrudya, what's called situations, violence and all this, that will make society safe. Obviously, if they learn a bit of techniques and tactics, they can work together and they can then, again, criminals only flourish where thugs, bullies, they flourish where people, the community is weak. So they have a saying in Punjabi, Jaan hai to jahan hai, and so on. So strength is not in terms of what's called physical strength. It's also mental, emotional, confidence and all this. That is there as well. Like. So you're making a Kshatriya society like. Nowadays, there was an incident a couple of years ago. There's a young girl in Bangalore coming from college or whatever with her books. Two guys on a scooter or motorbike came up and they started grabbing at her and all that. And down the road, just a bit down the road, there's about 10 men drinking chai or whatever, and they did nothing like. That is not the way that's na mardagi. So nowadays they'll make videos of people getting attacked and all this, and they won't intervene and so on. But you need to interfere like, and so on. I'll give you an example. I was once in England and I was just coming downtown, and there's a young man, he's a Muslim, he's taking money out of his, out of the machines in the bank, and he's just taking his money out, and suddenly this Gora came, pulled out a knife and put a knife to his kidneys. Like, and as I went past, I saw him like this, I saw the knife, and then I just turned quickly. So we have things like Devjal, Pujjal, and so on. Walk that you can't judge the how quickly I'm approaching. You can't judge my speed, my tempo, my rhythm, and I am before you realize it. My footwork floats, there's no up and down, it covers ground unexpectedly like a devchar and smooth like an elephant. And that's what I did like. The guy had a knife, the guy doing there, I just turned around, went straight at him, and he's like looking at him. I just did dabakawe. That's it. And when I came close to him, I just opened my coat. I have a bigger blade than his. And he just looked, he did nothing else, he ran away, that's it. So you can interfere like that, there, confidence. Now, if criminals now in this society, people are takade, they can defend themselves, protect themselves, and they can look after each other. Because with this also, you end up with ittifaq, like unity as well. Because that's what Vidya teaches, like. So a chain is only strong as each link. So if you go ekjut, that's there, like. So even if you meet someone with high skills, 4 or 5 you get together, with the right tactics, you can subdue them as well, like. But a lot of this gumption is now lost. So even in the West, like when you go to the West, in America, Canada, UK, they have the impression that Indians are very clever nerds. But the idea that they're warriors and martials, so on, they don't have none of that. The Arabs have the same understanding as well, like. But only with me now going and teaching amongst the world, they say, hang on a minute. I say it's not, but they see the Vidya as even nerdy, because it's clever. It's not based on muscles and so on. And they always, like even Indians, they emphasize how long India was conquered by foreigners and so on. They never emphasize how long it was not even, how quickly they got rid of them and so on. They might have been here, but we kicked them. There's no nation in the world hardly, apart from Nepal, who has been conquered and so on. Nepal, not because it's because of the terrain and so on. Every country has been conquered at some point and so on. People are mixed and so on, that mentality. So you shouldn't have hang-ups. The British emphasize this to make you mentally weak. But that's not the case. Like the British were defeated and got rid of in about 200 years and so on. The Mughals lasted less than 250, 200 years, and then there's constant resistance going on. Whereas if you look at, say, Egypt, you look at Constantinople Empire of the Romans, Persia, they all got converted to Islam. And the whole culture, the religion, everything subdued and destroyed. In India, they could not destroy it. So here, the pride comes with Sanatan Kshatriya of our culture and so on. No longer you will say, look, they're not weak. They're powerful. That's it. And so that is there as well. So the whole perspective of history changes. That they did not, even the Mughals at the end, they had to compromise with the Rajputs. Otherwise, they would not survive either. And they ruled mainly because they became a gun empire. They captured the ports in Portugal. They got guns from, don't forget, Babur came, 3-4 times there first, got defeated, and so on. And then afterwards, they kept monopoly of the gunpowder and firepower, and that's how they kept on. And then even the Mughals, by the hardcore fundamentalist Islamic individuals, they became too Indianized. They became Indian. And so they're not true Muslims in that sense. And then Aurangzeb did the opposite, then they didn't last at all. So again, the pride comes. Your health improves, your physical abilities, martial abilities, all that increase. And you can live a long, healthy, happy life. At the end of life, you are not bed-stricken. You can, on your feet, as they say, chalde firde, to the next world. So the benefits in the Vidya are immense, especially for attaching you to your culture. So a lot of the youth here, you see them, the way they dress, the way they're almost imitating what's in the West. Because a lot of anybody with the youth, like, okay, yoga, something peaceful, that. I mean, yoga is mainly seen as feminine. And some women say they're not attracted by that. So this is the masculine aspect of it, the warrior aspect of it, the culture aspect of it. And you'll be surprised when I do talks in the V&A with Troy Albert, and I speak about actual locomotion, relative locomotion. They're surprised that we have concepts of sapekta, relative motion, and so on. But the Indian sciences are very advanced. And you got to appreciate during British Raj, they ransacked a lot of sciences from here, renamed them under their own code, and then basically hid it away or destroyed. So there's no credit given to the Indians and so on. Now it's changing a bit, but at the end of the day, that's what conquered do. They rewrite the history in their own interest. So the Vidya is that chapter of Indian history, culture, and philosophy that the British tore out. But it survived now. We can put it back in the story of Bharat.
Guruji, it is very disheartening to see that our generation is not only physically weak but mentally weak as well, just as you told us.
Yeah.
When Britishers, they destroyed this culture. After independence, how could India not revive this? And because it could have...
So the Indians intellectually are fine, nerdy and all this and so on, that's fine. It's Atma Vishwas they're lacking, self-belief and so on. So even when the British left, who did they leave in charge? People who had been educated in their institutions and so on. So I'm not going to speak ill of Nehru, he was a great man. But at the end of the day, when such acts are done by him, where he collects, I've heard from sadhus, he collected all these ancient texts from the sadhus, and the sadhus believed he was going to make a great library, but he burnt them, all the ancient texts. And this is nothing unique to India. Chinese did that, Pol Pot did that, and all this. And unfortunately, in India, it didn't go that bad. But it's almost like a sense of shame that our culture in the past is weak, is this, and so on. And this sense of what you call, I can say, not appreciating our culture, history, what it is, that's what's lacking here. So I'm not saying the Indians are not mentally weak, but their self-esteem is low in terms of that. And they look upon others and so on. And then also, it works on your physical size, I was in a hotel here, number of kids and their parents that come to me, and their kids are like this, and he says, how do we get our kids to be big and strong and so on, and this, and you think this kid is 7 years old, like, and you ask how old is he? He's 14, 15. That's to do with diet. Okay, so a lot of the diets in India here is mainly sugars and carbohydrates as well, like, and even if you are vegetarians, like, and we are Kshatriya, we're not vegetarians. We are Bhairav devotees, so we do Jhatke to Bhairav and Devi Ma and so on. Even if you are vegetarian, like, Jogditya is there somewhere. He's a national Indian champion. He was 100% vegetarian. You can get protein, good protein from what's called vegetables and so on, peas and everything else and so on. So you're going to increase the protein for every kg of body weight, 2 grams of protein, and then get more physically active. Discourage kids from watching too much television, playing games, get them to to tactically teach their minds to be quick and sharp. The old days, they would teach them to climb trees, like, because when you climb a tree, you have to plan ahead. And also climbing a tree builds your confidence, because, going high and so on, and that's there. Ancient sages, like Vishwasharma, they wrote texts, Niti Shastras, like the Hitopadesh and the Panchatantra. And the Panchatantra and the Hitopadesh are basically Niti Shastras, books on statecraft for children, where in a main framework of a story, they tell you, like Hitopadesh says, how to make friends, how to lose friends, how to make war, how to make peace. And they give all the wisdom of ancient India in a way that children can digest it, through stories with characters which are animals and so on and so on. And in the Akada, that's what we first teach the kids. And we teach them not what to think, but how to think. How to be logical, how to be rational, and so on. Because you don't want to indoctrinate the children. If you indoctrinate them, eventually you will make them either completely stupid or you'll blinker them, meaning that they are clever in every other aspect except one thing, that they're blinkered to it. And so you can get that. You get men in religion like that, who are absolutely stupid when it comes to religion, but are clever in everything else. No, Hitopadesh, Panchatantra, you must be aware of it. Yeah, even I think, was it Chitrakali, some cartoons and all, they made them as well, with children even more simplified and so on. These tales are wonderful, like, so the kids, from small kids, even folk tales, Bata, so ancient ancestors, and like my great-grandmother, others in the villages, they will tell Bata. Bata means like folk tales and stories from the villages and so on. And they served as entertainment, but they also served as education and so on, making you aware of the world, etc., so on. So that culture needs to be back. Like nowadays, like the television, think about it, where with those stories and tales, Hitopadesh, Panchatantra, those are written by Rishi Munis, and their intent is dharmic and his intent is pure. Who writes television programs? And these can subliminally alter your whole psyche. A lot of kids that now go on the phone and they do this and this. It clutters their brain. So even they look through it gets in the back of the head. The rate of suicides amongst children in the West and over here as well, due to Facebook and all this stuff, is high. Like. So you should ban them all that. My kids, they had no access to phone until they were 17. They had access to this if they asked for a phone. But it made sense, like, don't give them any phones, and then that's it. And then now, like I said, is give them, it's like you feed the body healthy, you feed the mind healthy as well. And when they can think for themselves, then they can search out whatever knowledge they want, and so on. And then they can, instead of start indoctrinating them first, teach them how to think, and then wherever the karma takes them there, then physically they're healthy. Like minimum, you should be training 1 hour a day just to maintain your health. So you stay healthy, so your joints work, your muscles work, your organs, your neck, and so on, and that. And a lot of people here they haven't exercised all their life probably. Like I met people here, you mention a press up or a squat or any exercise, they don't know what it is. Like that's it, the only exercise they do is roti khani. And that's it. And then disciplined eating is gone. So the old, in Shastras they teach Bala Ati Bala. So Bala is mentioned in Tantra Shastras and is taught to Sri Ramchandra ji. So on the battlefield is taught that once you feel hungry, you will at least 2 hours you maintain that hunger. Only then eat. And then when you do eat, it must be like that much small portion, less than your full fill. Okay? If you get used to, every time you get an inkling, an idea of hunger, like nowadays snacks, put a snack in there, and then you're each time filling yourself to the point where you're bursting, that will increase your stomach lining. And that's the problem, like. And a lot of the pot bellies we get in India, because a lot of them are vegetarian kind of foods and so on, and they ferment inside you, the gases and so on. So you get that bulging. So the Indian physique they see in the West is a pot belly. That's how the Indians look like. They have a big pot belly, which is not the case if you look at the ancient Rishi Munis and sants and so on. So health quality will change. Your mental ability to think for yourself, not indoctrination and so on, will change and so on. Your ability to protect and defend yourself and so on. And your knowledge of Bharat, India, everything will change like. So now you have a whole picture, like you may have yoga, you may have Ayurveda. So for instance, in the Upaveds, Gandharveda, you have the knowledge of sound, called music. Your Stapani Veda of architecture, then Ayurveda, medicine, and then Shaturveda is one of them. There's a reason why Rishi Munis made 4 Veds.
Guruji, day before yesterday, I attended your training session. So in that, one thing you said, and I was very moved, that the highest goal of a yogi is truth, but the highest goal of a Kshatriya is justice, not truth. So it was really, it changed my perspective when I see a Kshatriya. Because when you talk about philosophy, when you talk about the highest goal of life, you always think about the God or the truth is the highest goal of life. But when you're going to teach this to a Kshatriya, he will kind of get confused with this, and he won't be able to perform his duty. So this ideology that your highest goal is justice, it prepares a Kshatriya for the betterment of the society and to protect his society.
So we will look in India, they divided the society into Sattoguni, Rajoguni, Tamasguni. So Sattvagunis are Sadhu Mahapurush, your Brahmlin huye. Individuals who are emerge the truth, like they seek the truth and they lead by their examples and so on. Even their diet and what they eat and drink is also Sattoguni, like the dud, honey, etc. So pal food, vegetables, so vegetarian diets and so on. And they're not concerned about we say Chimila, the goings on with the world and so on, because they are with Brahm and so on. So people come and bow at their feet, and by their very presence, they impart divine knowledge and so on, by their very example. There's nothing worse than some sadhu talking about truth and all this, and then privately he's behaving in a way that contradicts that completely. Like, so the sadhus sit at the center of society, like the fakis, the sadhus, and so on, and they lead by example mainly, but then also by their divine presence and their instruction and so on. Now the Kshatriya, on the other hand, their main, as you say, their job is to guard society, to guard dharma. Now, you can't guard dharma, especially against criminals and so on, who will lie and cheat and deceive. So to a sadhu, it doesn't matter if someone comes and lies to him. Sadhus go learn there nihagi. Can't do much to him. There's nothing he wants from you and so on. So there's no concern. So in Shastru, the Kshatriya, who as a sadhu seeks the truth, Sattvic seeks the truth, a Kshatriya identifies the lies. Because in Kali Yuga in particular, you will get individuals dressed and as sadhus, as yogis, but in reality they are bhogis. Even when Ravan came and deceived Sita Ma, he came as a sadhu. So that is there as well. So a Kshatriya identifies lies. And the belief is that once you identify the lies, the truth will stick out by itself. In Kali Yuga, in the Dark Age, you will find that lies will disguise themselves as truth. And the greatness of truth is such that if you mix a bit of truth into lies, they can sell the lie. You can't sell lies by themselves, like. Okay, you can look at the politicians, like. They have an element of truth in there, or the rest. This is the world over, like. So the Kshatriya is identifying the lies. The Kshatriya will employ Dharma Yudh, righteous war, but he also use Kutul Niti, like deceptive. So he helps spies and so on, and jasus and so on. He will infiltrate enemy territories to find information and all this. So if a Kshatriya goes into enemy territory, he may have to disguise himself as a foreigner and behave like a foreigner and pretend to be hostile to your actual country and all this, just to gather all the information, just like modern military, like role and stuff do, like, so that's all Kshatriya mindset. And to infiltrate criminal, like police, they may have to infiltrate criminal gangs, like pretend to be criminals and all this. So to catch a thief, you might have to think like a thief. To catch a murder, you might have to think like a murderer as well, like just to see how they would think and do this, and you catch them. Like the Kshatriyas in that sense. So the Kshatriya, they say, sits on the border, guarding the lands, whereas the Sadhu sits at the heart of society to lead them. So Kshatriya guards the borders, but he may have to cross over occasionally, just to deal with the enemy. Rather than dealing with the enemy coming over to his land, you never take a fight to your home. You stop them from getting to your home. So Kshatriya is that way, like. So apart from the Sattva-guni, Raja-guni, there are also Tamo-guni as well. And these are the Pogis, the revelers in pleasure and Maya and so on. So a Kshatriya, a good Kshatriya, his Manovittri is Sattvic. He's a devotee of the gods and Brahma, and he gives due respect to all the sadhus and so on. And he keeps his senses under control. So wrath, lust, greed, false attachments, ego, he subdues. That's a true Kshatriya. Like. So the ideal of such a Kshatriya is obviously Ram. But then you get bad Kshatriya, just like the ones that came when Parsuram came to destroy them. And these are individuals whose mindset, instead of becoming sattvic, they get so drunk with power that they become like Ravana. So Ravana originally was a very sattvic, he was a Brahmin, and he was well learned, and he was a holy man and a true devotee of Shiva. But in time, his lust and anger took over, and he lost control. Like, so then a Kshatriya who then becomes a Pogi, going to indulge into pleasures and so on. During British Raj, the British, when they made protected states of the Sikh kingdoms and the Jat kingdoms, the Rajput kingdoms, and all the Nizams in India and so on, they encouraged this licentiousness amongst them. Just carry on, you can do what you want and all that. And that's why the kings of that period are really pathetic and so on, because they are no longer the kings of because a true king protects the kingdom as a father protects his children. But the British encouraging licentiousness amongst them, let them keep the kingdoms, and they just indulge in their pleasures, and that's it. And so the Kshatriya Maryada is a balance. So there's a section in the Mahabharata where Vibhishan, lying on his arrows, will speak to Yudhishthira. And so in there he says, a Kshatriya follows Dharma most of the time. Because sometimes in life, you might make a decision, may not be dharmic, but for practicality and pragmatical, you may have to do it. So there's a story they tell in Shastra there. Once a Brahmin was coming along, and a cow came running past him. And the cow was obviously being scared. Then a little while there, a butcher came, a Muslim butcher. And the butcher asked him, did the cow go this way? And the Brahmin said, no. No cow came this way. So in the words, to maintain dharma, a sadhu, sattvic will always speak the truth. Only truth can uphold dharma. But in the Kshatriya mindset, a truth that undermines dharma is a lie.
Yes, Allah.
And a lie that upholds dharma is a truth. But this is an exception, like, understand that? It's just not there to justify everything. So these are exceptions. Exceptions are very rare. Okay? Hence, the Kshatriya were taught logic, reason, etc., and so on. So when someone decides to be clever and take out what they say and then try to lie his way out of it, they're smart. So rather than relying on someone telling the truth or lies, we assume everybody. We're seeing what lies are there, like, because there are lies in your button that you won't even know, like. Human memory is fallible. So what you think you remember is not actually what it is. And in the Vidya, they teach you, do not invest even the slightest ego in what you're doing. Because then your own personal interpretation will take over and your vidya will be completely corrupted. Bine manne hor se lujna, jase jan gawaye. To engage any other than your own mind is to lose your life. So Shatrudaya teaches you, subdue your mind. Do not let your mind, your ego get involved, or you will corrupt it. And that's what happens to a number of people. So the Kshatriya mindset is to use logic, tarak, niyaj, rational reasoning, and just don't think things at their face value. Whereas a sadhu may be always mittha like. Whereas a Kshatriya is not bota mittha, not too sweet, loki khajuge, and he's not koda either, that people spit him out. So he's neither sweet, he's neither koda, and bitter. So the Kshatriya way is a distinction that way there. So Kshatriya seeks, identifies lies, so he can attain justice. And whereas a sadhu seeks the truth, Kshatriya identifies lies. A Kshatriya will uphold and nurture dharma. And for that, he will seek the guidance of the sadhus and so on. But there's an understanding, is in the Mahabharats, that the sadhus should not interfere in Kshatriya traditions. Otherwise, the country cannot be defended or protected. Understand that? So the Kshatriya have their space, their place. The sadhu, sattvic have their place. And the tamsguni are the people who are lost to their mind, their ego, and are given into their low passions and so on. They're the dregs of society and so on. And sometimes you get yogis who in reality are bhogis. You have in India now, like, you have so-called sadhu babes who are in prison for rape and stuff, and so on. So they may appear to be yogis. In reality, they are bhogis. So you have yogis and you have bhogis, then the Kshatriya is there, and so on. So Kshatriya is not a yogi, but he's not a bhogi. A yogi will, in general, the sadhu, sattvic, they are celibates. They're generally not gresti. Whereas a Kshatriya, they have to be a gresti. It's common for them to be gresti. So otherwise, how are you going to build your armies and so on? There. So it's a different world altogether. Like, so in this India today, we need to differentiate between yogis, but they're all compatible. Like, they're not like so different and so on. Because by identifying the lies, you still attain to the truth. By seeking the truth, you will also attain the truth. The difference is, but sometimes you may be seeking the truth, and the lie in front of you is disguised as the truth, and he's trying to fool you, and you don't know. The ones you trust the most turn out to be something else.
It was nice talking to you, Guruji, and I hope more and more Indian youth embrace this.
Definitely, like I said, if they want to learn, there's an app called Sanatana Shastra Vidya. They can download it free in India. At the moment, there are modules on there for adults, going from Kulla Pentra, that starts Behro, and then they'll go on to Braha, Sheshna, Garuda, and eventually Birbag. Then by April, we should get for small children as well. So parents can actually teach their kids how to get confidence and protect themselves. With the kids version, there's no offensive techniques because we don't want to, kids only fight kids, there's no point. I don't want to teach them to hurt each other. Then there's a teenage version. So the teenagers, again, they're taught non-lethal techniques, but they're taught techniques with which they can actually hurt and protect, hurt their attackers and protect themselves. They're offensive techniques, but they're not lethal, but so they can protect and defend themselves and so on. And then hopefully by Septemberish, those who are interested in yoga, there's a Sanjam Kriya, a martial yoga.
Martial yoga.
And the martial yoga is distinct from the Hatha traditions and so on. And the martial yoga is to develop internal energy and so on. And so that's up there. So the app is there. Is like I said, you can download Sanatana Shastra Vidya app free. And the modules in India are very price efficient for you guys. It's like 300 rupees. In the West is different, rest of the world life. But India is going to make this accessible to everybody in the world. And the Kshatriya, not just the Kshatriya spirit, Kshatriya culture, and Kshatriya abilities. We want them to bring back. So Indians not just seen as called nerds and all this. You're surprised how many Indians live a life of intimidation and so on. No. So we need to get this at them. And the whole world is learning from this app now as well. Not just Indians, like in America, Canada, Europe, Australia, Africa, South America, you name it. The whole world, because with the foreigners, they get introduced to, I'm presenting an image of India, signs of India, that they, for a long time, the martial artists amongst themselves knew that there was a martial arts of India, but they've never seen it. They've seen the exhibition stuff, but those exhibition arts are not practical, pragmatical for combat. So this is now changing their minds. And you can look at the app on the free section where there's a testimony for ancient martial arts, soldiers from the American Army, etc. and so on. So we say to everybody, let's preserve our Kshatriya culture, let's bring it back. And the Kshatriya way, like I said, ultimately teaches it can only be done without hate and wrath, because you need to relax to do this. Because hate and wrath is all tamasagun. So with the Kshatriya mindset, like the mindset is always sattvic. Okay? It has to be shantras to do it and so on. And it's an opportunity for us to preserve our bit there. And eventually I want to come back to India here, get a akhada established here, amongst the Himalayas, and where it's nice fresh air, and get proper people trained up. Like, so if anybody's out there who can help us in that sense, may not be able to physically train, but they can help us acquire some land, etc. So on, others who can actually physically train, or minimum just go and talk about this, spread it out, that we have this art. Books are out there as well now, on Amazon and so on. And there are 3 volumes of Sanatana Shastra written, and other aspects of the art, their philosophy is written as well. And read the books, read this, get informed. And then you can tell the rest of the world, show them, tell them that there's a Kshatriya aspect. There's not just Mahatma Gandhi. There's also Shivaji Maratha, Guru Gobind Singh, Rana Pratap as well, like, and many great warriors from the homes to the Jats, etc. and so on. So let's bring our Kshatriya, as traditions, culture, history, philosophy, back to life.
Guruji, grateful for all the works you are doing and for all the things that we are learning from you. I'll put all those links in the description for the audience, so they can check out your app and they can also support. I'll also include all the links of the books that you're selling on Amazon. It's been a very nice talk together, and I'll also try to embrace all these things in my life. We have also started in my team. We have taken challenges, so we are doing this. But again, when we are having all this knowledge in our ancient Indian knowledge system, so why not to embrace it and spread it?
Yeah, we need that. Like I said, it only takes one spark to ignite everything. And we do have opportunity now to really bring it back and so on. And then even the Indian government and people in power and so on, if they want to do something great, or the average person wants to do great and earn the blessings of the Devi Devti and the gods and the Kshatris and the Rishi Munis and the avatars, let's preserve this with their life.
Thank you so much.
Namaste. Namaste.